All right, today we're going to be drawing a Northern Ireland landscape. So we're going to be drawing our horizon line to start off with, and we are going to go all the way up to our page because we are going to be showing great distance on this landscape. So we're drawing a horizontal line across the top of our paper, leaving about 3 or 4 inches from the top. As you noticed, I drew 2 lines just to kind of get a feel for that. Then I'm going to start out drawing a horizontal line for kind of this mountainous sea landscape here. So I drew a horizontal line across just a little bit above the horizon line. I came back down at a diagonal, coming towards the horizon line and then going across it. So it's kind of creating a zigzag effect there. You'll notice kind of a medium line and then a smaller line there. And then I'm drawing another kind of wiggly diagonal line that goes across and comes back towards the left edge or the left edge of our paper. And then I'm curving that ever so slightly, as you can see. And then I'm going to take my pencil from that curve and curve it at a vertical line, okay, going up and down. Then I'm going to come back with a horizontal line and curve it around to create kind of this cliff edge here of this landscape. Now, as I looked at my picture more, I decided to extend that point ever so slightly and come down just a little bit more. From each of the points of these cliff edges, I'm going to draw a vertical line down to give it a three-dimensional feel, as if you could fall off those mountains or cliffs into the water below, okay? Remember that in a landscape drawing, you always want to find your horizon line, which is what we started off with. So this is actually showing the earth and the water touching. Remember, our horizon line shows the ground and the sky touching. Okay, in this case, it would be the water. I came back around to kind of create this shoreline, as you can see. And again, I'm erasing that original horizon line that now I don't need because this is where the cliff is and it went just ever so slightly above the horizon line. Okay. So again, we're trying to show depth in this particular picture. So I am wanting to create a huge space on my paper. So my paper is horizontal, right? And then I'm creating these cliff edges. Okay, from the point at the bottom here, I'm going to curve my line and they're going to be kind of parallel to each other, if you will, here. So I'm coming down at a diagonal. I curved my line around and then I'm curving it back around. And then I'm kind of coming at a horizontal, a little curve, and then coming to the right edge of my paper. All right, from here, I'm going to continue drawing my shoreline. So this is where the water would be touching that seashore area. And I'm coming around it, kind of giving it that, I'm going to call it the wiggly feel of the sea coming up onto the shore, which is why I started with one line and then kind of switched lines here. So I gave it more of a curve and wiggle to it. So it looks like the water is coming up and coming back. Now, I created this side of my cliff and I put a line here to kind of show where the sand and the cliff edge touch, but I am going to come back to that in just a minute. So hold on. I created another kind of, I'm going to say, little island or rocky area where the cliff edge was in the water. All right, so coming back around, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from that curve. I'm going to draw a diagonal line coming out. I'm not going to touch the edge of my paper, but I am going to curve it around because this is actually another little grassy area on this cliff where it will be down off the edge of the cliff. So I'm creating that spot where the grass would be darker and kind of showing where that grass touches that sand and that area, and then I'm coming back around to connect it to that cliff wall, if you will. So I'm going to erase that line. I don't need these lines anymore. here. And then I'm going to erase that curve where it was. I'm going to extend my seashore ever so slightly out, so it's not quite so parallel. It should start to look something like this. Again, going back, some erasing lines here and there. Make sure you have a good eraser today because we're going to be erasing um, quite a bit just to kind of get the feel. I always start with more basic shapes to then go into more complicated shapes, especially when we have mountainous areas like this, especially when we have lots of different pieces like cliffs, like water, seas, sky, those types of things. So I'm now making sure that all of my lines are in the place that I want them before I get started with color, looking to make sure that the curves are where I want them, making sure that they're the right size. Um, as I showed you earlier, I did kind of have a sketch of what I wanted this. It was really small, but now I'm getting more exact and more detailed. The nice thing about landscapes in any drawing really is that you are the artist, so you always get to decide what you want to include and what you don't want to include. So if you want to make your water lighter, darker, you can. If you want to change your seascape so it's nice and I'm going to say wiggly and shows lots of different edges and curves to those cliffs, you can. It doesn't always exactly have to be like the picture. Now, if you love the picture and you want to make sure that you get it true to form, you're going to want to spend more time looking at your picture and figuring out where those lines go. But for this one, I really liked how these cliff edges and walls were very different. And so I really kind of wanted to almost exaggerate them a little bit and show them kind of in the way like almost like a story would. So I love this picture. Thank you, Tammy, for the inspiration from Ireland. I really appreciate it. This, though, is just showing all of those pieces of this land. And the greatest part about this picture is it shows great distance. You can really see into the distance. So now you saw all the colors we're going to be using. We're going to eventually do kind of a darker blue, but I'm actually going to start with my sepia again and just kind of block off where those cloud shapes will be. Then I'm gonna kind of draw just a liner on that horizon line and on those cliffs where it's nice and dark. Remember, dark really comes out in shadows and in things that are further away from us. So we want to make sure, especially on cliffs, that if something is in front, we want to make sure that we get those shadows on there. We want to get the shadows of where the sea is touching the sand because it also creates a shadow. We also want to make sure that we get the shadows of like the darker greens or that moss and that green vegetation that would be hanging off those cliffs. So I'm adding those in as well. Again, I always start lighter with my sepia pencil, making sure that I do get those dark areas in. But then if it's really dark, I go back and really push harder to get those dark spots. Saw some more rocks in my image, so I wanted to get those in, so I added those to the sea. Then I know this is going to be kind of a darker green area, so I'm giving that sepia piece right there. Saw some more rocks, adding some shadows here and there, and getting that pencil in those spots. I'm going to start with my blue, and I'm going to get all of my darker blue areas in my sky. So I'm starting back at the top. Going over that sepia pencil that I started with, these are going to be these are my cloud shapes, like I said. So I'm getting in those dark spots and then those lighter spots as well. I like to start dark and then I go light. And then I'm going to add my white, which is nice and creamy. Kind of gives it a very soft feel, like those clouds have just kind of been lazily moving around in that sky, which is really nice. There's kind of a white, I'm going to say almost fog-like piece I want to add to this. So I'm doing it on top of the horizon line. Um, and then I'm going back with my blue just to blend in those blues and whites. I'm going to start with my sea. Remember, water is reflective, so I'm using that same dark blue that I had in my sky, and I'm going to add it to the back of my water. Then I'm going to use my lighter pencils, so my light blue and my white, to get in those white areas. Notice the direction of my pencils too. I want to make sure that the direction always goes the same way with my pencils. In one area of my water, I went back and forth from left to right. In another area, I'm going diagonal because I drew kind of a diagonal line there. So I want to make sure that those lines go back and forth. Okay? And you'll see why that makes a difference in just a little bit. Adding my darker blue back into spots where there were shadows, because it is darker when there are shadows, so I want to make sure I get that. Now I'm moving on to my vegetation, so I'm doing that kind of greenish color on the side of those cliffs and mountains there, kind of just showing where those dark green spots are. Then I am going back in and looking for where that green may have come into the water or where it may be off on another cliff and adding those spots. Then I'm coming back in with kind of a dark brown, using that dark brown to go over my sepia because, again, it's farther away, so I want to make sure that those shadows are nice and dark with the true color. Then I'm going to the seashore, adding my brown there because, again, the water will move the sand and it is darker when it gets wet, so we want to make sure we show that. From here, I am going to add just very lightly my white to the sand because my paper is kind of a tannish color. I'm going to add that white in those spots, and I don't actually have to do as much since to the cliffs because it's a tan paper. So when I add my brown and my white, I'm doing it together. All right, I'm starting with kind of a lighter green for my area. Again, this is where this probably is not the true color of this, but this is, when I was looking at this picture, I was like, wow, I just really want to capture these vivid greens. So I'm using kind of this green to kind of capture that. So it's nice and bright on my paper. So I have this really dark green against this really light green. And then I'm going to go back in and blend this color again with another green on top of it. And then I'm using my blue to kind of really make the entire piece pop because I want to make sure that that blue against that green is really showing up. Finally, I'm using more of a medium dark green for these spots that are nice and down below. And you should start to see your picture come together. I mean, doesn't this look like it could come from a storybook, guys? This is so awesome. Adding my white kind of sea lines for those waves that come in and out. And you should have a finished piece. Thanks so much, guys. Please like and subscribe. Talk to you later.